I'd like to go through two things. First, I'd put some arguments together as to why the death penalty is not an acceptable outcome, why philosophically it's not an acceptable outcome, and also to try and give some sense of hope and some sense of direction and some sense of effort, so we head off in a direction that actually can deliver something. So that's really what we need to do. Otherwise it becomes a futile exercise if we can't walk away from here with some sort of direction as to what we should do next. There is a time where you need to kill somebody. And that is when your death is imminent and probable. When someone is incarcerated, when they are locked up, they are neither an imminent threat or a comparable threat. They have been removed as a threat. There is no longer any reason for you to do any further action and to remain within as incarcerated. The threat, once removed, what purpose does it serve to then go and kill them? Once that person is no longer a threat to you, what more can be served but the most banal of human aspects, the aspect of retribution, an aspect that takes us to our lowest human denominator, where we think to something that really things to the most base angels in our nature, rather than taking us to a better level, to a better place. You have to balance off, and we have to put forward the argument of what is the power of retribution when put against the power of compassion, which is the aspect of human nature that takes us further ahead, and which is the one that drags us down. As a nation and as a world, whether it's our nation or somebody else's, what is the one that leaves people and leaves that nation with a greater path? A nation based on retribution doesn't offer much of a path at all. But this is an argument that all of us, all nations on earth have had to deal with over time. The balancing between retribution and compassion. What we've also found that is when we let the better side of our nature, the side of compassion, speak through, that there is no effect on it doesn't bring about a collapse of society. In fact, we've shown that death penalty as a punishment is no real deterrent. And if we look around the world at the nations with the highest death penalties, we don't see the nations with the most apt and just sense of purpose. What would obviously be the case if the death penalty was a sense of deterrent, it would be happening where it was prevalent in ever-decreasing numbers, but it doesn't. It's static and in most cases increases. When we talk about the death penalty, we talk about a spot in time that we therefore judge a person by. Everybody has shades of human nature. We all have our good sides and our bad sides. Certainly myself, and I imagine everybody else in this room, we could go to one point of time in your life, which if I was to judge you by, you'd be seen in the most uncolourful and unwarranted light. I know that everybody has that time that we believe that if we were judged by that specific instance of what we did, that we would be of failing even ourselves, but also we would see ourselves in a pretty pitiful state. But what the death penalty does, it says that spot in time becomes the absolute. That spot in time is what you are for eternity. That spot in time is you completely. That action that you did is you in your totality. And we know that it's not right. Because once you acknowledge that argument, then you refute and you resile the argument of redemption. You resile the argument that you can become a better person. You resile the argument that you can turn around, that there is a greater horizon in front of you. Because you are inherently stuck. You are pinned to that one point in time and that one general mistake. I've no doubt that Scott, in his heart of hearts, if one was to speak to him, if you said to him, do you believe that what you did was right, he would acknowledge that it wasn't. If you ask him, does he believe that the trafficking of drugs and the hideous ramifications of that practice, if he believed that was a just thing to do, he would acknowledge that it wasn't. I have no doubt that Scott has moved on from the person who was caught. I have no doubt that Scott is now a different person to the person that he was. And one of the worst things about capital punishment is it kills the different person. It doesn't kill the criminal, it doesn't kill the person in the heat of the action. It kills the repentant. It kills the person who's on that path of turning around their life. It completely dissuades the argument of hope. What it also does is it takes those around them and casts them along in that air of profanity. And I obviously, there's no doubt everybody in this room feels for leading Chris tonight. The death penalty punishes others who've never committed any crime. It punishes a whole range of people associated with it, and it takes them all on that journey, and unfortunately that journey that will never end. That will never end, just as the love that a mother has for a child or a father has for his son, it will never end. And it doesn't take into the acknowledgement the disproportionate effect of what that action, that the death penalty is. I believe that all people have rights, and they're intrinsically attached to you, and they're attached to you from the moment you start to the moment you die, and nothing can separate those rights from what you are. That those rights have to be supported, and there are always continual attack on those rights and all the manifestations of what they are. Like the scourge of drugs itself, the death penalty is going to punish all those around the people who are currently incarcerated in Indonesia. I, as my colleagues have said, do not for one moment condone those who participate in the drug trade, and it's not the action of that. Nor is it here to give a lesson to any of our neighbours about senses of morality. It is really to pursue an argument against an action. It's to pursue an argument against the death penalty, not an argument against any place or country in Pacific. It is applicable to that action and a statement against that action. And what our arguments here tonight do is we try to appeal to the higher nature of what we are as human beings. That we hope that we are more than a creature of retribution, that we are creatures of compassion, that we are creatures of forgiveness, that we are creatures who can turn our lives around, and that we are not to be judged at one item in isolation for eternity. And now I'd like to briefly go on to try and deliver some sense of direction as to what the government is doing to try and secure the transfer of prisoners and treaties with Indonesia. The Australian government welcomes progress made on an international transfer of prisoners, a prisoners agreement with Indonesia. We see pursuing a prisoner transfer agreement with Indonesia as a high priority. An agreement would provide significant rehabilitative benefits for prisoners and the community in both Australia and Indonesia. Agreed key points on the proposed treaty, which were announced on the 29th of June 2006 at a joint press conference held by the Australian Attorney General Philip Ruddock and the Indonesian Minister of Law and Human Rights Dr. Hamid Awaludin, include: the agreement will apply to prisoners already in custody in either Australia or Indonesia. The agreement will cover all offences. The agreement will provide that a prisoner will serve the sentence imposed by the laws of the country in which the person was convicted. The agreement will not apply to people facing the death penalty unless that penalty is commuted to a prison sentence. And currently, this penalty is under appeal.